Okay, I thought it might be fun to compare the various versions of the game Imperium Romanum. Now, I've already done videos on two of the versions, and but one of them is like 12 years old. And I was fooling around with Roma Victrix the other day, and it got me thinking about these games. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to compare these versions, tell you a little bit about the history of this game. All right, the first version of this game came out in 1979, and the publisher was West End Games. Designer is Al Nofi. I had the game. I thought it was a great study on the Roman Empire. I remember it had a tactical series, like a tactical battles system, you might say. When two large stacks got into a battle, you fought it out on a little tactical battle. That was later eliminated from the second and third versions. Uh, I've got a story about this version of the game. I was at a convention, must have been about 79, 780, and there was a table with a fellow just all alone with a whole bunch of copies of Imperium Romanum. When I think about it now, that might have been Al Nofi himself, or maybe just a representative of the West End. I don't know. But I talked to the fellow, he showed me the game, and I was quite impressed. But I wasn't into ancient games much in those days, so I didn't buy it. So I didn't buy it in 1979. I think I bought it a year or two after. But ultimately, like I said, I did not keep it, and I was, hoped for a second edition. And lo and behold, in 1985, it was reissued by West End Games, and there was a co-designer here, Nicholas Quain. It was a greatly improved edition, and I'll show you some of the components. So I was quite glad to get that. I bought this. I studied it. Again, came to the conclusion it's a great study on the Roman Empire, but mm, not the best game in my opinion. Ultimately, I didn't keep it again, got rid of it. And as usual with me, I often rebuy games, so I've got Imperium Romanum 2 again. So let's see how the third edition came about. Okay, we fast forward to 2019. I saw this game at WBC, and I think it was like $125 US. And I don't know, I didn't have a spare 125 US at that time. And when I looked at the box, all I could see was this. There was very little information on it. It's a large box. As you can see, it's quite large compared to the second edition. That's the bookcase style. This one is much larger, which is good in one respect. But as a consumer, I couldn't tell much about it. You could look at the back. I mean, it certainly looked good. The map looked just beautiful. The counters were upgraded, looked really cool. But I ultimately didn't buy it right away. You see the copy right here is 2018. Anyway, a few years went by. Ultimately, I did buy it, and you can see my video on that game. But the purpose of this video is to compare the two. So without further ado, let's compare the two. The boxes obviously are obvious. This has got original artwork here. I really like that cover, actually. This one that's from an old painting. I don't know the author or the artist or the year, but it's a very cool cover. I don't know what they're depicting, what event it is, but nice cover on that box. But you can see the size. Real estate is a much bigger box. Okay, now we're looking at the Imperium Romanum third version. That's what I'll call it. And the Imperium Romanum second version on top of it. Now I've had to put the flyleaf on my table up to show you how much real estate it really takes. You can see that the third version is much larger than the second. That's got some nice advantages and some grave disadvantages too. The main advantages of it are, of course, are the hexes are much larger and the counters fit comfortably in. Let's take a quick look at the version 2 map. and then we'll look at the version 3 map. Okay, so I'm off the tripod now, so I'll try to keep this as steady as I can. But we'll just slowly scan from west to east on the Imperium Romanum 2 map. You can see Spain, Aquitania, Lugdunensis, Italy is clearly delineated. You can see the high ground with the dark brown and even darker for real high ground. You can see the quality is quite good. It's a nice looking map. The provinces and stuff are well marked. They have these city symbols with the funny arrows and all that. And that was to show that that city existed in some time periods and not in others. That was kind of handy. See the green there, clear areas, Thracia, Greece, North Africa, Egypt, into Arabia Deserta. And then you've got your movement charts here. And there's that period display. And your tracks are on the side. So it was a perfectly functional map, but it got a little awkward when you had high stacks. Let's take a look at the third version. Okay, now we're looking at version 3. I think the colors are better. Just a beautiful looking map. Again, the provinces are well marked. Clear terrain, forests, your towns, Salamanca, Toledo. And they've got something the other one did not have, which I'll show you in a second. Sardinia, Corsica, there's Italy. What is missing is the, remember those little arrows that show you what era the towns existed. That is missing. Now, at the top, you'll notice some bigger hexes. These are very handy. They're just duplicates of other hexes that are on the board. For example, there's hex D, and you can see the equivalent of hex D over here. Again, that's good for when the stacks get unwieldy. Your game year track is there. Your monthly tracks, turn tracks are at the top. You can see there's a whole host of those special hexes. Again, the colors are just vibrant. It's just a nice looking map, and sure is a pleasure to have the large hexes. Now over on the right, they've done something different. They've got a pretty detailed province display. Now, I've only played the game a couple of times, and some have questioned how useful this thing is. Well, I don't know. I find it of some use, but I see their point. Here's your terrain key. Again, takes a lot of room. It's such a beautiful map. They did a wonderful job on the maps. I cannot slight them for that. Now we have to get to something I'm not as happy about to show you, and that's the counters. Let's take a look. Okay, here we're looking at the way I sorted the Imperium Romanum 2 counters. But even the first version had colored counters. There were 6 major powers, and as you can see, they've made the colors bold and vibrant: red, blue, green, yellow, brown, and black, and purple. So you had each major power with its own distinct color. There were generic symbols for like light infantry or barbarians. You had your leader counters with the Pontifex Maximus symbol, cavalry, things like that. All of the service arms were easily distinguishable. And there's your fleets. So I have no problem with the original counters, except in one area, and it was a fatal one for me, and probably ultimately why I got rid of it. The counters were just too darn thin. They were thin, thin, thin. And they were very, very difficult to pick up. Remember, we have a devil of a time picking them up. And okay, there I pick one up, great. And if you use tweezers, it was hit or miss. they were thin. I didn't like that. Now, the advantage of having thin counters was you could use one tray and get all the counters in. So that was the plus and minus of the counters to this game. But it was a deal breaker for me. So when Imperium Romanum 3 came out, I was quite excited. Bigger map, deluxe box, all that kind of thing. Remember, I didn't get to see the counters before buying. All I could see was the back of the box. So let's take a look at the Imperium Romanum 3 counters and the grave error that they made. Okay, the error that they made in this game, and I can't call it anything but an error, was they made all the counters this off-white color. All right, so you could no longer distinguish the six powers. So how were you supposed to do that? That was never explained in the rules, and there never really was a way to tell them apart. Well, sure, once you got a leader counter on there that was colored, he could be on a stack, and then you would know, well, that's the yellow stack. But what happens when you've got units all over the place that were not under a general? That was a very bad fail for this game. And I can't understand why that decision was made. To me, that's just, I'm sorry, it's a stupid decision. Now, lo and behold, the control markers were all in the original colors. Why the devil they did not just go with what version 1 and version 2 showed? Use colors, man. Now, the marker counters, they were colored, so you didn't have any problem there. That was a big fail. Big fail. The counters were larger, which is nice, and they fit the larger hexes fine. And the counters were thicker. So they improved on several things and failed totally, miserably on the colors. So you couldn't tell who was who. And I think for many people, that's what turned them off from purchasing this game in the first place. I won't say too much about the rules. The original one was, they were fine. I had no trouble with them. They were 32 pages long, and there was a power form, which you could use to fill out your legions and province treasury levels, things like that. It was perfectly functional. And they had this province to show you all the different periods, agriculture of the provinces. That's with the new one. In the new version, there's that chart, remember, we looked at in color. The new booklet is in color. It's much thicker. It's 48 pages. I found this one okay to read. I don't know. This one didn't really resonate with me, but it seems to be complete. Now, I've not played enough scenarios to know how different these two are, but I've been watching comments on Board Game Geek, and some people, come up with these pretty radical statements like this game is broken because they changed the supply rules and all that, or the way Siege works. I don't know. I got to take those comments with a grain of salt. I've not played it enough to know the difference between the two. Broken, well, I'll get to that in a moment. But rules wise, well, what can you say? Rules book. There was not a great improvement on it. It did make it into a simpler game. It's the same game. If you liked Imperium or Romanum 2, you might very well like 3. Wasn't a lot of difference in the rules. One big difference from 2 compared to 3 was all the charts and tables in 2 were in a small, thin booklet with the tax value chart and various periods of mobilization. So it was handy, and the combat results table. So it was nice and portable in a small booklet. They changed that in Imperium Romanum 3. They went to a non-standard size chart. It's quite large, physically large. That's not 8 by 10. What, 8 by 17? I don't know. Anyway, combat and movement, land combat results table, all the stuff that was in the charts and tables in version 2 is here on this chart. It's double-sided with more stuff on the back. Bad side is I think someone on Board Game Geek shrunk these down and made them 8 by 10 so people could copy them. So they went all out making it, this is the deluxe version, but that's got disadvantages too. One nice thing was this miniature of the map. That was also in Imperium Romanum too, but this one is physically larger, but again, very difficult to copy. I don't have a copy that can do sheets that size. One thing that was included in this game that was not in the original, I remember, is a tax value chart and yeah, where what hex these towns are. Sometimes I don't know where Lita is, so I have to look up here. It's alphabetical, thank God, and you can find out what hex it's in. So I have to admit, I did find myself using this. Mobilization charts, again, they're all there. It's complete. There's nothing incomplete about version 3. It's just supposedly bigger and better. Okay, epilogue and finale. How do we wrap this video up? Inevitably, somebody will say, well, which one's better, 3 or 2? Well, and I'm not copping out. I really can't tell you because I don't know. I guess maybe the madness of Commodus must have come over me because I rebought this after already owning it before and getting number 3. And my conclusions for this comparison of the two games is much as the same conclusions I reached when I did the videos individually. And I think Callendale reached the same conclusion. This is not really a game, it's a study. It's almost someone's thesis on the Roman Empire. All the stuff is there, the research is there, the counters, the scenarios, all that you want in a Roman game is here. Unfortunately, it's not a very interesting game. I remember when my son and I played it, I think we played either the Year of the Four Emperors or it might have been Caesar versus Pompey. I forget which. But in the end, we gathered the forces, checked the taxation, the mobilization, made our armies, supplied them, got into combat, got onto a square, had a big, big combat, and then one army died. And that was the game. Is that fun? Well, I didn't find it much fun. I just filling out tax forms and mobilizing men. It was just rather dull. Was it realistic? Yeah, it is. It was realistic. And often ancient campaigns were decided by one big battle, like Pharsalus, for example, between Caesar and Pompey. So my conclusions comparing the two games are the same conclusions I reached years ago. I've got them. I don't know what I'll do with them. I'll probably just sit on the shelf, never played, like a lot of other games I own. Maybe it's time to get rid of these in a trade or something. I don't know. So I hate to end a video on a negative note. I do acknowledge, as I've said before in the other videos, Mr. Nofi has done an incredible amount of work doing these scenarios and creating these games. I think Decision Games fumbled the ball in this version. It's got some serious flaws. Solutions. Well, I guess I had it in the back of my mind. Why not use these counters, which are colored, on the new Imperium Romanum map? Sounds like a good solution. Not sure if it's worth the effort. Like I said, the Volume 2 counters are very, very thin. They're also smaller. You get spoiled on those 5/8 inch counters, which is in the new one. So ultimately, that little experiment will be a failure too. So that's my last words with Imperium Romanum. I think the game I just reviewed the other day, Roma Victrix, is the game I'll probably end up playing for the Roman Empire. And of course, got my old one, which I really enjoy, is Conquest of the Empire there on the right. Light, and you want a nice light Roman game, go for that one. If you want something with a bit more depth, go for Roma Victrix. And I recently got Battles of Julius Caesar too, which I'd like to get into. I had the old versions. So that's it for the comparison of the two Imperium Romanums. Thank you for watching.